Hey there, everybody. I'm Carson Grubaugh.
I'm Brandon Graham.
Welcome to Living the Line, and this is Formalism Friday. We're finally getting back to it with our constantly swapping shirts because we record on so many different days.
Oh yes, Friday canceled until we started these up again.
Yeah, I'm
6 day
sorry
week.
they're so intermittent, but life. And you're what? You're at the end of your day now?
Kind of, yeah. I'm starting a whole new schedule with my kind of day job comics where I normally it was like I had to do 4 pages a week, and it was always just like, you know, Mondays was my Mondays and Tuesdays I plan out and everything, but I'm now doing a new schedule where last week I just penciled 10 pages, and then this week I'm just trying to see how many I can ink. So I've put myself in the daunting task. I don't know if I'm going to actually hit it of trying to ink 2 pages a day.
And you're like working overnight into the morning and then sleeping during the day, or?
Yeah, I mean that's a simpler answer to your question. I woke up sometime yesterday.
Okay. I know you were like, yeah, I've been working. Let's do this before I crash.
Yeah,
Uh,
so if I seem a little out of it, it's because I'm a little out of it.
I miss that, being able to stay up all night.
I'm
Having
jealous of
to,
a normal day. Like I miss the sun.
oh, really? I miss the night. Like, I really like being up at night. Uh, so speaking of more time fuckery, this is one that you have that has some interesting time in it. Who do you remember who the artist is here?
Oh yeah, that's Nick Bertozzi, and it's
Okay.
his comic Rubbernecker. And Bertozzi, I think last I talked to him, he was teaching at SVA.
Okay.
He's a fantastic New York cartoonist who I think for a while if I'm remembering right, he went to the Kubert School, and then he went and worked at at DC and as a production artist for a while because my old roommate Filthy Rich knew him, and this is a comic he was doing through Alternative Press, I think around like 2004 or something.
Mm-hmm.
There's a story about like a guy with a very shitty life and a daughter and an ex-wife and kind of living with his family and everything. And so the reason that I suggested this one is it does something that I can't really explain why it works, but I'm starting to see it now with me. But basically, the way this works is it's two guys climb to the top of a bridge and jump off it, but the panel in the middle happens after the panel on the bottom right. And my
This one
theory
after
is that
that
it
one.
works because of the size differential.
Okay. Well, and I think also, well, it also has the fun, like the, hey, break a leg. I like that. Um, but I think also because it's in the middle, it just, yeah, maybe the size too, but it sets itself as like the key image around which the rest of the whole thing revolves. Like,
Yeah.
so you mentally understand that this is all like kind of leading up to or related to this central. It's almost more like a big symbol that it all relates to me.
Yeah, there's something really nice too about the far right last three panels. I like what a kind of moment to moment thing that is. I was thinking recently about I'm always trying to pull apart the manga The Walking Man and figure out why it's such a good book and why it works so well when nothing happens in it.
Yeah.
And I think I got a clue recently while looking at Jack Kirby comics. There was a thing a while back I might have mentioned you before where I was reading the new X-Men series that were coming out at the same time I was reading the first Stan and Lee and Jack Kirby stuff. And
Okay.
something that really I thought was really effective in the old stuff is they would have a lot of moment to moment panels, and it gave you this tactile sense of things happening. Where the more recent X-Men comics, you would have a character, they had a laser sword and they were cutting through a robot, and it was them cutting through it, and it was starting to explode, and they're already 10 feet beyond it. Where Jack Kirby would show the beginning of the slice and then all the way through it, and the character running away for the explosion. So it'd be like 4 panels as opposed to one big pinup.
Oh, so we're like compressing the action too much now.
I think so, yeah, or at least some artists are, and I think it really makes you feel more like you're there if you see a little bit of like it happening.
Yeah. Well, and looking at manga, I've been I've been thinking about those same things a lot, just because they do decompress things so much more, and you get like the before the hit, the impact of the hit, and the after the hit, or you even get like 3 panels of the sword slicing through
Oh
and
yeah.
things like that, and that's having a big impact on me. The book that Sean just finished the Kickstarter for, Plaza, there's a book by that guy that I just recorded a video for that will be up in the next couple days, where it's just people getting on a train and going from like one city to another city. That's the whole like 200-page book.
Oh
And I
wow.
was thinking, like, in an American comic, you would like show them get on the train, and then you'd show them get off the train, unless something really like relevant to the plot happened on the train, where there was like an exchange of drugs or something.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you would just, they get off, they get on, or you would just show them even just getting off the train somewhere.
Yeah,
And
but that's another fascinating trick in comics too, is like how little can you show and still convey information. Like you could probably just show somebody like leaving the train station, and that could be the entire the entirety of they took a train somewhere, and never show a train.
yeah, like, or just like literally like the doors opening and they get off,
Yeah.
or but then you've got this book that spends 200 pages of these guys getting on this train, walking through it, catching someone's eye. Like, why is that guy looking at me? Well, because you came through the door, like all of that stuff. What's that person holding in their hand, ordering a drink? And I mean, it's kind of like it's a weird double-decker train that has all these extra sci-fi kind of weirdness things going on, but like showing the tracks going and like jolting the bolts with like the rocks bouncing, and
Huh.
it was like, oh man, it's all this stuff that's like definitely part of a train, but I would never stop to think to draw any of that, but I should.
Huh, yeah, that is cool. There's something I noticed in The Walking Man is when you're reading a comic where nothing happens, I would start to see sinister things in the storytelling almost. Where,
Really? Like on this page here.
yeah, where it's just like there's a one where he's just like walking along and he decides to climb a building, um, and kind of like check out things on the roof. And it was like just that it's a building in the middle of nowhere, like he's like walking in a forest or something and sees the building. It like was like, why is this building here? Is there some other reason? Because I'm so used to this, science fiction. That's the one. Yeah, I'm so used to kind of science fiction stuff. You'd think that like he climbs to a building and then he sees a murder or something from there, but nothing happens.
Well, and he's like running up it, and like, I mean, because he's running, he's just gasping for breath, but he looks kind of scared.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing this one. I remember like this kind of stuff. I don't remember that. I'll have to go look through my copy. I know there's like a expanded version that came out recently. Maybe this is
Oh,
a new
cool. Yeah, I
one.
mean, some of the stories are just like I think one of them is like 6 pages or something really short.
This was one of the most kind of devastating books for me too when I first read it, that just totally changed my opinion about what I wanted to do
Hmm.
with comics, like because it was so beautiful. I don't think I'd ever seen anything that just like focused on like slowing down and smelling the roses at the time. And like you said, it's 6-page stories, so they're really not that decompressed. uh they're pretty fast for a manga, actually.
Yeah. Um, Also, he's putting so much detail into stuff, so it's like really, yeah, it's like I mean, I feel like I talk about it constantly because it really like shook me in a way where I was like, why is this so good? Like, and why is this so unique in what it is?
And how does it work? Like, we've got a page of a guy tripping,
Yeah,
and so you think it has something to do with this? Oh wow, okay, there's a whole bunch of them. You think it has something to do with like him drawing you in with the moment to moment stuff?
I do think that, yeah, because if you just had a sequence where it's him, like walking down the street, and then you have a whole page where he trips and another page where he's like a block later and he's like, oh, I'm walking funny now because I messed up my knee or something. I think we wouldn't quite feel like you're in it with him.
And this is the story you were talking about too.
Yeah, exactly.
That
Yeah, and
seems
it just
ominous.
goes to the, yeah, just that building there looked really ominous to me when I was first reading it. And I was thinking it'd
But
be
then,
interesting to do a science fiction story, something where you walk by a field every day, and then one day you walk by and there's a building that was never been there before.
but like you said, that's like your brain has been biased to think that way. Like
Yeah,
Taniguchi's like, oh, look at this guy, he's enjoying a walk, and he finds a building, and he's like, oh, I'm gonna go get some cardio.
yeah.
And he runs up the stairs, and then he's like, okay, I'm tired, I'm gonna look at a bird.
It'd be
And
great
like
to
you
do
don't
audiobooks.
need that like mystery of the building showing up to still tell a compelling story.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. And this one, I don't know. I don't know the rest of the story, but this is a similar thing where like there is a big action, but I don't know what the rest of the plot is. I could really read this as a one page, two-page spread and just be done with it.
yeah,
Um, it has that similar. I think what it is it's just like people like Taniguchi, or you said Bertozzi,
Bertozzi.
Bertozzi, they're willing to like find those things that we all do and have done, and then like make note of them, and they can do it in a way that shows that it's a special moment.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know, there's something not even this more nostalgic in this work, and in Taniguchi not so much, but I don't know. It's the same thing as like thinking about the train ride in the Yokoyama Yuichi, like, oh, how much I need to slow down and appreciate the things around me.
Yeah, it does feel like an artistic version of conveying your experience to other people. Because this isn't like, you know, what's it like when the most heroic man fights off a bunch of cyborgs in the future? It's more just like, here's the thing that I experienced that I want to try to show through this medium.
And I think that's why you're like, okay, well, how does this work where there's this big panel, but it's out of order? It's like if you're thinking about memory, like you're gonna be like, okay, that time I jumped off the bridge.
Hmm.
And then this is like that big first, like, because when you look at a composition like this, you don't, for me, I don't necessarily come in and read it like this. Like I look at that big post in the middle first, and then this is like tangential to that in my mind. And so it works to me like that, like a memory where I go, yeah, that one time we jumped off the bridge. And then you start going, oh yeah. And then you remember, like he told me, hey, dumbass, don't go up there, you're gonna break your leg. And oh
Yeah.
yeah, then we smoked. And so I think that's part of why it works too, is it's like the big symbolic totem of the memory, and then you kind of fill in the gaps outside of the memory.
Yeah, certainly. I had a thought today about something that doesn't happen as much in comics, or at least you might correct me on this, but I was watching a like a Chris Pratt like Navy SEAL TV show today, and they had a thing in it where he keeps having this memory of him playing guitar next to his daughter and a bird hitting the glass and dying. And I was thinking that something that happens in film a lot is they'll show a scene and then repeat it a lot. And I feel like in comics I can't think of many examples, probably because you're drawing things over and over. Where I don't know if there's like a lot of like repeated scenes kind of shown over and over again.
Well, you think you would because you just stat it and you're like, okay, I saved myself some work.
Yeah, but I feel like it almost is like our brains would almost be like, that's cheating. But yeah, I remember years ago I got an early PDF of Paul Pope's Battling Boy, and it
Mhm.
was out of order, and like it was still like, 5-page chunks were together, but there were parts of it that was out of order and parts of it that were repeated. And I remember reading it before I realized that and thinking like, this is genius. He's doing like repeating scenes before you know before it hits a culmination or something. And I keep thinking about that. I've never really enacted it in my own work, but I think it's something that would be worth considering more.
Well, it's like that. It's like one of the first episodes we did. You were showing, I think it was the Tom Herpich
Yeah.
poem, and it's talking about like the feeling of your hand or something, and you were talking about training the audience with the symbols.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah, it's your guts are like this, do this, and how the words started to mean that. So yeah, you could change. You could have the thing where the sound of the bird hitting the window was something that you used a specific sound effect for, then later on you could just show that sound effect or something and have the character waking up and you knew that he had that same dream again.
Yeah. But I mean, you could over time just use the same image too. And like they're doing in the movie, it's like it just keeps building significance as it goes, because you keep, I'm assuming, I haven't seen the TV show, but I'm assuming that's like a key moment in his life, and then things keep kind of triggering it, and it keeps gaining intensity of meaning as it goes.
Yeah, I think that might be where it's going. But yeah, it's interesting because I'm sure that's happening in comics, but off the top of my head, I can't think of examples of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Chris Ware would be the one that will do that, like in that one issue of the Acme Novelty Library where he's building up the language, and he keeps coming back to like the titty, like the circle with the dot, and he keeps going back to like, oh, the light, like my light up here, it's got a nipple on it and everything.
Okay.
He keeps doing that kind of stuff, but it's not the same image. It's like taking the circle with the dot in the middle, and he's an eye, a lamp, and the character just gets obsessed with tits by the end of the book.
So do we all. Yeah, yeah, that's fast. It is. There's something where repetition almost feels like more of a artistic trick, and I feel like the artier ends of comics are harder on themselves, maybe for things like just statting images.
So you think like even though it's an artsy trick, the artsy people aren't going to do it because it's too much of a cheat in their mind?
That's my theory. I don't know if it's
Okay.
true. I mean, but it also might be one of those things where, so much of mainstream comics is like almost more, the writers are oftentimes more influenced by screenplays and film than comic books, where I wonder if someone would write that, in a Daredevil comic and someone would have drawn it.
I keep thinking too of I think it's in Snatch, the movie Snatch, where there will be like a drink and the cup goes down and they get on an airplane and like the passport stamped, and then there's like some coins or something, and that scene repeats a couple times, like those sequences, and they have noise with them. It's there's one of the two Guy Ritchie movies, Snatch or Lock, Stock.
I remember that. Yes, that might be interesting. Is you have a shorthand basically of like this means that they're getting on a train and going somewhere. So you see these panels again, and it means that they're doing that. I mean, that may be interesting if the artist you're talking about, if he did his whole train book and it was part of a larger series, and then they had a thing where it just shows the beginning and end of the scene of like, this is what it means, and this means that he went on this long train journey and did all this stuff, and you give the reader more insight in what that actually means if you show it one time and then imply it other times.
So like if you've read the 200-page book, but then you have those same like repeats in other volumes, that would be interesting too.
Yeah.
I think it's just and we've talked about this before because you seem really interested in it. It's like training the audience on a language. And that's interesting. And I recommended this before, but the Blue Man Group concerts do that, where they train them rock move number 1, and you pump your fist, and then they'll show them and they'll train them, and then when you get to the finale, then they're not telling them, they're just rock move number 1, woo, and then they'll have them go through a sequence that they've learned over the course of the concert.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, because there's always this idea, I might be repeating myself, there's always this idea in comic books that you have this like universal language, but one of the great things about comics is you can kind of create your own. I think every cartoonist probably does create their own version of things their own bag of tricks. And that's always my big critique of like, mainstream superhero comics is they act like there's kind of one bag of tricks for all of comics. And so it kind of dumbs down the reader to kind of expect like, this is what this means, this is how this looks,
Yeah. And it takes away, if you assume that there's a universal bag of tricks, then it takes away the ability that you're talking about to train your audience on your tricks. And it's not like training a dog or something. It's a communication thing where you're learning someone's communication style, and you can teach someone how you're communicating and how you want to communicate.
Yeah, and ideally you could even pull off kind of grander tricks, like if you read I don't know, if you read a Clive Cussler novel, about, you're gonna just expect this like A, B, and C thing. But if you've read a Vladimir Nabokov book and you know what to expect, you're not gonna, he can do these amazing things with language where you're here for it because But if you tried to throw just like some of the language tricks from Lolita in the middle of, Clive Cussler's When Eagles Dare, it just would be lost on the audience because they wouldn't kind of know what to look for.
I'm pretty sure my dad had a bunch of Clive Cussler books, and I'm pretty sure those were the big hardcover books I was grabbing off the shelf and flipping through really quick, and I got really good at finding the page that said like nipple.
You're just like the guy from Chris Worthing. That's funny because Clive Cussler came to mind because that's what my dad calls me up and tells me he's reading.
Yeah, it was
That's
definitely
what dads are reading.
Yeah, it was books on my dad's shelf, but I knew that there was like adult content, and so I didn't want to read the whole big history book basically, but I knew I could flip through and find like a sex scene if I had a keen enough eye for like the right words.
Give this to Clive Cussler.
So that's what Clive Cussler has trained me as an audience reader, is that if I find the word nipple in his book, I can find a little sexy scene.
Nice.
Yeah, I
It's your
do think that.
superpower.
Well, and you're talking about these like grander tricks like that. The thing you're suggesting with the train is like you could, over the course of a career, you could even like tie everything you do together with these little communicative tools.
Yeah, and I wonder I wonder if guys guys with huge bodies of work like Osamu Tezuka, I bet because I know he did a lot of stuff over and over, but I wonder if I wonder how much he had trained his audience, because he had he had all of Japan reading his comics at some point. I wonder what I'd be interested in if he'd pulled off any tricks by just people knowing his work so long. So if he had this dramatic scene in Kimba or something where he could bring it back in another series and be kind of allude to that a similar thing was happening, and then divert audience expectations.
That would be a really interesting study, but it would have to you'd have to read it chronologically. You'd have to read the output chronologically, I think, to really understand.
Yeah, and imagine another part of it, kind of knowing what else was going on in comics and everything. I remember there's a book that Frederick Scott did, I think, called Manga, the World of Japanese Comics. And in it, he mentions about something where Japanese manga artists in the 60s and 70s were constantly on this cutting edge of inventing new sound effects. And there'd be things where someone invented a sound effect that's just for thinking silently, thinking really hard, and it would be this big thing where everyone was it was an innovation where they're like, oh my god, he's come up with a sound effect for nothing, that's amazing, that changes
and then they all use it.
Yeah.
Well, there's another living the line thesis project that someone can take. We're constantly handing out doctoral theses. Ryan, we should get Ryan Holmberg. He might know because he's super into that. But that would be interesting to take someone's career, read it chronologically. Because Tezuka definitely, he has that weird little pig thing that shows up, and he shows up most of the time.
And repeating actors, their characters that he regards as actors. Yeah. I mean, I've read, I think the only artist I can think of that I've read their career back to front now is Hergé, when I did all the Tintin read-throughs.
Yeah, I've got the little Tintin collection. I've only read one of them though. We'll have to, me and you should do a Tintin, because you've got to educate me on the appeal. I don't know, maybe I just haven't got far enough, but to me it's very stiff comics.
I mean, a lot of the appeal of Tintin is I think Hergé is kind of one of the baseline artists for kind of what I think of as Franco-Belgian comics. So you don't get a Mobius without a Hergé, and so that's a lot of it for me, is kind of seeing the origin of Mobius is kind of Hergé mixed with the Mad Magazine guys in some ways.
Yeah, and I get that, but when I actually sit down and read it, I'm like, man, when I was 5, I always grabbed the Tintin books and I loved them, but now it's I just can't read it. I can flip through it, and you sent me the picture, or you had a picture posted on Instagram of his cat that he drew.
Yeah, it was his cat, and you really liked that one.
Beautiful, Japanese brush and ink, super calligraphic loose, and I was like, oh my god, I'd love to see comics like that, because Tintin's so coloring book to me.
Yeah, I wish he did more kind of abstract stuff. One of the things that actually got me back into Tintin, if this helps you, is I really enjoy all the alcoholism and head injuries. Yeah. And there's a little
Okay.
bit of racism peppered on there too, but because it was the era, but the cultural context around it, like I'm really fascinated by the Tintin book that's a Falling Star is the one he did, his first one he did under Nazi occupation of Belgium, and up until then, Tintin was really had his finger on the pulse of real world events. Like they did the Blue Lotus, and it's actually talking about how Japanese and Chinese relation at the time that Tintin was coming out, and he got a lot of critique from it because he had such a strong political kind of anti-Japanese imperialism stance on it. And then, Nazi occupation of Belgium, and then suddenly he's doing a book where he's like, World War II is not happening, everyone ignore it.
Well, and I read the first one, which was like black and white, and it's like a super critique of communist Russia.
Yeah.
It's like it was before it was getting colored, and it looks kind of different. Okay, I'll have to keep reading them. I have them, and I just got those Terry and the Pirates things that Ted Adams is doing at Clover Press. He's doing these big new printings of them, and so I just got the first volume of that. And it was kind of the same thing where it's like the stories are kind of crap, but it is fun. And you're talking about the racism, and it's like, oh my god, with the Chinese, the Chinese characters are like, whoa.
Yeah. Have we talked about Mail Call at all?
No, I need to get that.
Yeah, it was hard for me to track down. My girlfriend got me a copy of it because it's the Milton Caniff book that's he was just doing it for American servicemen during World War II, and it's his like sexy comics about servicemen and dealing with this model that lives near them.
Oh, okay. That's a shorter one though, right? Like you can pretty much get it in one volume, and it's a one and done.
I mean, he only did it during one war, so didn't have that much time.
Yeah. Oh, I'll have to keep an eye out for that too. But yeah, that's pretty fun. And the early Milk Caniff has that same. I was really surprised that it's all like kind of just clean line with no black filled in.
Oh yeah, because later on he just looks like he would just spill a bottle on his pages and keep going.
Yeah, and it kind of reminded me of the hair gay. I don't know who came. I'm assuming Caniff came first, but I don't know. It just had that old newspaper comic style more than I suspected. So that's one of the things that I'm curious to see as more volumes come out and it starts to look more like what I think of Caniff, tracking his development.
Yeah, because even some of that stuff, I was really engaged with some of the story later on.
And the Terry and the Pirates.
Yeah, I think that's one that's really, yeah, it's a part of it. I think is when you really get into something and you can kind of push past. You're like, what is this? Then you can find something good in it.
Well, with those things, I try and take them like, I made the mistake of trying to read through things like that all in one sitting. And it's like, no, take it one storyline at a time, or, not one day at a time, because then, you'll never finish it. But same with Tintin, instead of reading like all three of them that are in a book, it's like, just read a couple of them, just read one of them. Or realize that these things were coming out in like a newspaper daily, that first one, so read it a page at a time, because it's like, oh, how is he going to get hurt, and then he gets hurt, and then like the next page it's like, how is he going to get hurt again? You got to kind of lean into that structure a little bit.
Yeah, and I feel like I should qualify, when I was reading through all the Tintins, I was doing them as like Instagram stories, so it became like a little bit like a sports game for me where I was tallying up head injuries.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's definitely like at the end of every page, pretty much there's a head injury.
I mean, not quite, but it gets pretty insane. And some of them, it's like there'll be like double digits of people being knocked out in a 40-page book. It's really impressive.
Yeah. So we'll have to do that. We'll have to pick your favorite one, and we'll do a Tintin episode.
Okay, I've also got the whole run of Asterix here that I've kind of just started to dip into, and I think Asterix is a little more accessible than Tintin in a lot of ways. It's a little weirder and more fun.
I like it better. Its stories are more like start to finish. Like Tintin is very much like gag, come down, gag, come down, gag, come down, gag, come down. Asterix is more like, here's the arc. And I don't know. I like Asterix quite a bit. I've read a lot of it. I have a few like collections, not the whole thing, but I have a few of those books that I've just found here and there used.
Yeah, that is great cartooning too. Yeah, I mean they're both fantastic books, and it's always maddening me. I think about me at like 16, how there's the idea of having a comic in my house that was unread was unthinkable, and now it's like I have entire runs of things where I'm like, I'll get to those one of these days, you know?
I tried not to do that. Like I'll grab things and be like, okay, I'm gonna get the complete 1010. There'll be a couple things like that, but I still try and like get to it because I feel guilty.
That's good. Yeah, and Nausicaa is my next big white whale. Is I'm gonna get all the Nausicas and read those because I remember that really blowing me away.
Yeah, I will do stuff that like you I know Brandon is a huge fan of the Post Bros. And so when I see these now, I grab them, but I don't have anywhere near all of them. So I'm hesitant. I do have things sitting around that I'm not reading because I don't have the whole thing yet.
I enjoy reading things just if you're like, I got issue 16 of this weird thing. Let me try it. Because I feel like a comic has to be so bad for me not to be able to kind of basically figure out what happens in the middle.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. I'm just the OCD. Like I want to read it start to finish. Like I just found a near complete run of American Flag,
Oh, nice.
but it's got like just a couple random issues missing. I don't, this is driving me crazy because I've been going to Second and Charles and looking in their long boxes and they have tons of them. And I'm finding like Legend of Mother Sarah, and it's like 8 issues and like issue 7 will be missing. And it's like, what asshole came in here and bought just issue 7?
I have Legend of Mother Sarah. Let me know what you're missing, and I won't be able to just send it your way. And did you get the American Flags? Is it just the Chenkin run, or did you go past his run where the other, I think, Mike,
Yeah,
Mike Badger?
yeah, there's some other people doing it. I didn't realize that that happened. I don't know if I would have grabbed those issues. I just saw American Flag and I was like, oh, they got like all of them.
My
Are those
favorite
any
is
good?
actually post Chenkin of it.
Say that again.
My favorite run of American Flag is the post Chenkin stuff. Like the Chenkin stuff I like a lot, but when it was when I first read it, there's a later series where Chenkin was only doing covers, and it's drawn in kind of a looser style, and Reuben Flag and the Cat Raoul and the robot guy all go to California, which is supposed to be destroyed, and California is supposed to be completely missing, and they find it's still there, and they do a road trip through California with a guy who's like an old man version of what a teenager in the 80s was like. And I remember those.
Which is now how all those guys are
Yeah, it's very true.
in real life. Yeah, I think I have those because I got all the way up to like issue 49.
Nice.
And when I was pulling them out of the bags and like putting them in my little thing, so if I find more issues, I can check and see if I've got it already or not. I was like, wait a second, this isn't Howard Chaykin. I got ripped off.
Which is written by, it might be a backup in an issue or a full issue. There's a weird issue where they go to a town where everyone's been like shot with a sex ray and they're super horny, and it's written by Alan Moore.
Really?
Yeah, it's written by Alan Moore and drawn by a guy who did a Vietnam series that Fantagraphics published, I think, in the 80s. And it's a really weird, kind of ugly art style, and kind of, it's almost too horny for American Flag. It's like,
And it's in the original 50 issue because I think there was a volume 2, right, that came out way later.
yeah, because at some point they changed the spelling of American Flag and restarted it, and I think Chenkin was more involved in that run.
Okay, well, I hope I got the Alan Moore horny one. I'll look forward to that.
It's not his finest work, but it's interesting.
I feel like a lot of Alan Moore's work is kind of just horny and not his finest work.
Yeah, I like that he's managed to maintain this reputation as like his good work kind of floats to the surface, and everyone ignores the horny stuff. I mean, everyone's like, there's sexual violence and everything might not be super necessary, but he's generally thought of as a, his better work, where it's funny because a guy like Chenkin is generally like a lot of the public perception of him is like his worst moments rather than his best, unfortunately.
Yeah, and he's someone that his art style has always, I don't know, something weird about it. And so I've always kind of stayed away from him. But like I've liked some of the newer things he's doing. So that's why I saw these and I was like, hey, I can grab American Flag #1 for $1.
Mhm.
that has to be a good deal. I don't know how much I should be getting charged for that, but like
That's it.
to get a whole, I got the whole run for like $20 almost.
Nice.
So I figured I'd check it out. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him at his best. What I flipped through already, like just the design of it all is really impressive.
Oh yeah, I don't know if I mentioned too, the sound effects in that are from doo-wop music, which I didn't realize while reading it.
Oh, I'll have to keep an eye out from that.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know if he's credited, I think Dean Haskell was an assistant on one of those.
Okay, that makes sense. He kind of has that graphic style.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, well, we've off the railed again, as we do. So thanks for following us on our train journey. We're training a patient audience.
One of the best ways that you can support what we're doing here on the channel is to support the books that Sean's putting out through Living the Line. The first book that he put out is The Strange Death of Alex Raymond. It's a collaboration between Dave Sim and myself. The book was recently nominated for an Eisner Award in the Best Reality-Based category. It's a deep dive into the artwork and methods of Alex Raymond and the mystery surrounding his death in a car crash. So if you haven't grabbed that already, please do. The Abolition of Man is a 5-issue mini-series done by myself and Sean in collaboration with the Midjourney AI. What you're seeing here is the cover to issue 1 and the first couple pages of issue 1. This first issue, we fed it an essay by C.S. Lewis, and this is just the imagery that the computer spat back at us. Issues 2 and 3 are a narrative, starting with the story that I wrote when I was 21, and then Sean's going to write issue 3, picking up where I left off. In this one, I'm kind of trying to force the AI to give me the images I want, and then doing some tweaking in Photoshop to get these kind of colored looks on it. For issue 4, we're turning the task of writing over to the AI as well. So the AI has written the script, and then we've just put that into the Midjourney AI, and it's turned out art. The script and the art is some of the absolutely most horrific stuff I've ever seen. We're a bit scared to even publish this issue. And I don't have any art to show for it yet, but Sean and I have decided to do a 5th issue of Abolition as well, because we have someone who we're really excited to have on board, providing an essay for that 5th issue that we'll illustrate, and we'll announce more about that soon. There's also Yokoyama Yuichi's Plaza, which is a totally intense manga by an artist who has somehow figured out how to distill manga down to its purest essence. This book was successfully funded on Kickstarter, but if you missed the Kickstarter, you can order it through any comic store, any bookstore, Amazon, any place that you would normally get your graphic novels from. Make sure to like, smash that subscribe button, and ring that bell.